We know that radio is one of the most dependable and widely utilized forms of media in the world. What does World Radio Day mean to you?
Well, I think it's a timely reminder of the incredible importance of radio to especially the continent, and to remind people in South Africa that it's the biggest medium by far and away for people in South Africa. Our biggest radio stations in South Africa are African language stations that belong to the SABC. And I think critically it reminds us that there are forms of receiving news and information that are public interest and that are credible and reliable. And that's radio as a form of journalism, of giving people information and news that they can rely on, is even more essential today than it was, say, 50 years ago when the internet wasn't really as much of a thing.
Yeah. And this year's theme is radio and climate change. All of that is an effort to support radio stations in their journalistic coverage of this issue. It's communication which could, in some instances, be a matter of life and death for those who may have missed it, isn't it?
Well, especially if you go up to different parts of the continent where people still don't have access to the internet, for example, where radio is the main form of receiving any form of communication. There really it's a means of being able to communicate what's actually happening with climate change. Again, this is really about helping people get information about the climate that they can rely on and that they can understand, and also how they can try and start to adapt to climate change in particular. You know, it's one thing knowing that it's happening because you don't really have a choice. It's there. It's even hotter, it's drier, there's greater droughts, all of those sorts of things. It's another being able to know what to do about it and how to deal with that. And that's where radio is really invaluable, because you can produce things, you can use radio dramas, you can use radio news bulletins, you can use current affairs interviews in order to help people understand what kind of things they can do and how they can relate and deal directly with it. It's also a much cleaner form of broadcast, which is to say it's a lot more climate friendly, in fact. So the power requirements for radio versus, say, AI and the internet are significantly less. So it's a much more climate friendly form of communication. And finally, again, I think it really comes down to how people understand and relate to radio, which is something that you can do and listen to while you're doing something else. So you can't, for example, cook a meal while at the same time watching TikTok on your telephone or on your mobile device. You can, however, listen to the radio while you are cooking a meal because it's there. You can hear it, and it still has this incredible power to bring people together in a way that few other media can.
And with radio being a low-cost medium specifically suited to reaching remote communities and vulnerable people, how do you think, as we expand a little bit on that climate change theme, it's assisted in emergency communication and disaster relief efforts?
Well, I mean, that's exactly one of the most powerful things that radio is able to achieve, because you can, with a relatively small transmitter, get long distances, especially if there's been, for example, a hurricane, floods, some kind of natural disaster, fires or whatever. You can go into an area, you can erect a transmitter quite easily, and you can start to transmit. And anyone with a small device, a low-powered radio, for example, can then easily receive and transmit and address, and find out where they can go and get emergency water or emergency rations. So even on those basic parameters, it's still an incredibly valuable and powerful means of communication.
And very lastly, William, as we let you go, as we assess the media landscape and, take a look at things like advancements in technology, like the increased popularity of streaming services, what role or what does radio look like in the future?
Well, lots of people have predicted the death of radio for decades. Certainly when television came in, they said, oh, well, there goes radio. And then when the internet came in, they said, there goes television, there goes radio. And then when podcasts came in, they said, there goes radio. Radio still has the ability to command large audiences, and because it's not an individual thing, it's very much a community-based thing, its power as a means, as a medium, is still immensely large, and it's something that I think will stay with us because it's got the ability to bring an audience together like few other media can. And certainly when you add to that dimension the importance, the critical importance of public service media like the SABC in South Africa, its value to our democracy can't be undersold. It's so incredibly important for our democratic society, even if we have everyone having access to the internet, which we still don't. Even if we have everyone having access to all sorts of digital devices, its role in being able to communicate with people, bring people together, and help them in times of crisis and in times of deep stress is just something that I think we'll need for at least as long as we're still alive.
Very well. Thank you so much. Thanks for weighing in on the discussion. Wrapping up that conversation with William Bird, Director of Media Monitoring Africa, expanding on the World Radio Day, the theme of radio and climate change.